people are continuing to insist that they have had close encounters of the fourth kind. The abduction phenomenon is not going away. Instead, as Carla Wall tells us in this report, it's getting some attention in the academic mainstream. If alien abduction is here to stay, they concede, we'd better figure out what exactly is going on.
I was so terrified looking into these big black eyes.
I ended up on a craft, laying down on a table.
Surrounded by these beings, and one of them's putting a needle in my neck.
They're emerging from a personal nightmare, coming forward to tell their stories of alien abduction. The sheer magnitude of the phenomenon is what inspired this author to write Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, Alien Abduction, UFOs, and the Conference at MIT. He is C.D.B. Bryant, a seasoned and respected journalist, contributor to New Yorker magazine, and the author of Friendly Fire. I met with Brian at his home in Connecticut to find out what drew him to the academic conference on which his book is based.
Why go to the MIT conference in the first place?
Because it was such a crazy idea. And I thought that if MIT, that high church of technology, was holding a conference on this subject, and I learned it was being chaired by Dave Pritchard, who is a Broida Prize-winning physicist at MIT, and John Mack, who had already won the Pulitzer, the Harvard psychiatrist. So these two men were chairing a conference on this subject, which was the equivalent of Little Green Men. It was news. MIT was lending this phenomenon a credibility which it had never had before.
The prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a bastion of critical thought, was an unlikely setting for a conference on the alien abduction phenomenon, which took place in June of 1992. Physicist and MIT professor Dr. David Pritchard organized the conference.
The point is not that MIT endorses alien abduction as a scientific area of research, but that they endorse the principle of academic freedom and freedom of inquiry.
Pritchard and his co-chair, Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Mack, assembled the most respected names in abduction studies for 5 days of seminars and debate. Despite the scholarly focus of the conference, many attendees faced scorn from their colleagues, including historian Dr. David Jacobs.
This is a phenomenon that is steeped in ridicule. There is a price to pay. It's a price that I have paid willingly. It's a price that I think all academics have to pay ultimately if you're very outspoken about the subject.
You have to be doubly, triply careful about what you say. It's certainly going to be misinterpreted. In fact, you don't have to say anything and people will say, well, Dave Pritchard thinks it's real, even though I never said that, and I don't have any evidence. That doesn't matter. The fact that you're doing it, you're going to get branded in this fashion.
What did you go up there thinking?
Well, I went up determined to have an open mind, which says I was skeptical, and I still am. But in the meantime, I had such admiration for Pritchard and Mack for the risks they were taking. And ultimately, I felt such affection for the abductees and their courage for having come forward.
For the skeptical Brian, it was not the presence of so many respected academics, but the sincerity of the 20 abductees at the conference that ultimately convinced him to take the phenomenon seriously.
I woke up terrified. Light comes in the window, bed started shaking.
I was screaming because I had alien eyes right in front of my face and I couldn't get away from them.
They were so vulnerable. They were frightened. They were smart. They were attractive. They were everything that you would want in a human being, and yet, God, these terrifying things were going on. And I wasn't going to be the one who laughed at them and made fun. I just wanted to try to get them to tell the story and understand it.
Here's someone who came into this with open eyes, and basically he says that these abductees are sincere, they're telling similar stories, and we just don't know why.
The fact that he sat down and wrote this book and went through the process of his own changing attitudes towards the subject matter, I think is extraordinarily important. It's kind of a model for the way I think an intellectual, if he does get daring enough to look into the matter, would tend to find himself moving.
Despite his attempt to leave no academic stone unturned, Brian was unable to find the kind of physical proof that would finally end the debate over the abductees' extraordinary claims.
One of the astronomers up at Harvard complained that he wouldn't believe in the UFO phenomenon until a tailpipe or a cigarette lighter dropped from one. But people neglect the fact that these abductees are hard evidence.
So you think something's going on? Do you think abductions are going on?
I'm going to have to be a journalist. I haven't been abducted. I've never seen anyone abducted. But boy, the people I've interviewed are utterly convincing. And as the phrase is, utterly credible people telling utterly incredible stories. They believe they've been abducted. There's no question in their minds.
Very frightening, you know, you can't really explain what it's like unless it's actually happened to you.
This is something that affects you all your life. There's a part of me that would love to find the answer, that it was something else.
CDB Brian knows that far more research is needed before anyone will get to the truth of the abduction experience. But Brian says he won't be the one to do it. One paranormal book is okay, he feels, but two will compromise his standing as a serious journalist.